Our reading this morning is from 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 to 13. The gift of love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand my body over so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love.
I need to give a little explanation before I share with you this morning that this sermon in part comes from a challenge and an animated conversation with Jan Thornton. If it wasn't for the conversation and the challenge, I would never have worked this week to put this together and come up with what I have. So you don't usually dedicate sermons, but this one is dedicated to Jan Thornton. The basis for the dedication is our animated conversation last week about the fact that our Prime Minister announced a free app for homeless people. They could download it to their phones and they could find out where there was a bed or where there was food. The only thing is that the majority of homeless people don't have smartphones, and the majority of homeless people couldn't afford the data required. Just to prove that, I tried to download this new homeless app to my older iPhone, and it came up with a thing saying you need to upgrade your iOS. So in other words, I didn't have the latest operating system, so I couldn't download the app. So I'm sure there are lots of homeless people out there who are struggling in the same way. We sometimes think that when we offer things or when we do something, that the phrase or whatever it is might be all that is required. You know, the ubiquitous phrase that confronts us so often, there's an app for that. Of course there is. Think of any first world problem, well, almost any first world problem you can imagine, and thanks to the genius of some computer geek or whatever else, someone holed up somewhere, you now have the solution at your fingertips via millions of applications or apps. Need to get your to-do task organised? All you need to do is to download the To-Do Reminder app, which is free at the moment. Are you always running late? You need to download the Running Late app that will text your friends to let you know how far you are behind. Need to track your daily walk? My daughter does that when she goes for a walk with the dog. She has Map My Walk app, and she always lets me know how far it is that she's walked because that app sends me a message. Feel a compulsive need to take a picture of your lunch and share it with all your disinterested friends? There's an app for that. Now, some of these apps, true, are about better productivity, while others are all about wasting time. However, as I said at the beginning, they have become a ubiquitous part of our lives. Now, of course, none of these apps is a once and done deal. If you use them enough, you know that an app is only as useful as the next update from the developer. And we're constantly being reminded to download the next update. And we're also told that the app will work better when we've downloaded the update. It will make it less buggy. There'll be more security features. Perhaps there'll be new graphics or a little emoji face that runs across the screen in a bright colour. And sometimes, and you've all discovered this, I'm sure, that when you update, the app no longer works. And even if that's not the case, if you use any app, you have to update, and that's the way it works. Now, I'd want to say that whilst apps have made us connected and a whole lot better, they haven't made us better or more compassionate people. I mean, we might add a comment to a friend's Facebook post offering them sympathy because they've got a bad cold, and we might do that whilst we're sitting next to a distressed person on the bus. We might send someone an Instagram of our luscious lasagna dinner as we're walking past a hungry homeless person on the street. Somehow, getting the update should lead us to getting a clue, but it doesn't seem to always work. So, believe it or not, St. Paul saw the problem and said to the Christians in Corinth, you need to do something because you have an app problem. You don't believe me? He says you are not applying Christianity properly. There is a difficulty with application of the faith. Now, even though they were first century Greco-Roman people living in a context where there wasn't a mobile phone tower anywhere in sight, the Corinthians, as we read the letter of 1 Corinthians, were a bunch of selfie-taking narcissists and hardly belonging to the Church of Jesus at all. And the list of problems, if you read through Corinthians, is not unlike the problems that we confront in our 21st century world. They were a bunch of trolls, if you like. They were lobbing insults back and forth to each other, which is what chapter 1 is all about. They were obsessed with celebrity teachers and I'm a celebrity, don't get me out of here. And they were always talking about the celebrities, the teachers that they wanted to hang out with. They used whatever they had to adopt a whole range of legal lawsuits against each other. They talked about the foods that they ate, which were sacrificed to idols, and nothing about the goodness of the foods they should have been eating. And the wealthier members went to the Eucharist or the Thanksgiving services or the times when there was food, and they ate up everything before the poor arrived. The Corinthians seemed to be a bunch of people who were working from all angles, seeing all their own reflections in the screen and missing out on everything that had to do with being truly the people of God. So St. Paul sends them a message that they need an update to make their community function more smoothly. And he calls that, if you like, a love update, or depending upon how you did your Greek, he talks about it being agape or agape. And that is the basis for how they are to update their style of life as a faithful people. Now, in the 21st century, we use one word to describe a whole lot of things that we love. We might say, I love this app, or this morning Craig told us, I love my cat, or I love coming here, or I love staying away, or whatever else it might be. But it's not the same as when you use something like, I love my husband, or I love my children, or whatever. Whilst we use the same four-letter word, in Greek there are a number of words to cover that. And those word choices are really important. There's the word phileo, which is to deal with the kind of friendship and love that you might have for a very good friend. There's the word storge, which is the kind of love that a parent might have for a child. There's eros, if you want to go out and be as erotic as you possibly want to be. And then there's a word that has nothing to do with those little smiley emoji faces and all the rest of it, but a word that has to do with willful, sacrificial, unconditional love. And Paul says that particular love is the love agape or agape. And he lays out in detail how they are to get that and how they are to practice that and how they are to, in a sense, step away from taking selfies, in other words, being so concerned about self and being more concerned about others. Paul says, you might be a gifted people, but without this update or this app with respect to love, nothing really works in the community. And so he gets to the end of chapter 12, just before entering into chapter 13, and says, you must strive for the greatest of gifts. There is still a more excellent way. Let me tell you about that more excellent way. And he goes into chapter 13. Now, you might have a ton of apps that give you all the mysteries of the universe at your fingertips. But if you and I do not practice love, then all the apps, keeping that going, that we have are really us just holding a handful of silicon chips. We might even decide to give away everything and make do with an old Motorola flip phone. But we will not gain anything from doing that if we don't have true love, which was part of the fat thing with our young people and giving up for Lent. In a community that truly embraces the depth and reality of love, that particular update changes everything. We will not be, if we were, at each other's throats, but as verse 4 of the piece that Dawn read to us shows, we will be patient with one another. We will not have any sense of jealousy. Our heads will be pulled away from the minutiae of our own lives and find more time for the lives of others. We will turn away from those influences which distort us, which warp us, and we will practice those things which build us up and make us a kinder, gentler people. Paul is saying in all of this, this application, this update, this app, is what enables us to express hope and love and faith. And once it is installed, he suggests, it will never fail. Paul says that once we download that into the life of the church, then the things that we really want will come true. And you might say, well, how do I get this app? Well, St. Paul puts it forward for us in chapter 13. He says the way in which we might find this application, live and practice this life, is by pursuing love. It's an app, like the app that was given to the homeless, to be shared freely with others. But it's an app that makes the whole community better, not just shows the homeless where they might find a bed and a meal. This app is for everyone to share and do. Most of the apps we receive update automatically. I get fed up when my phone or iPad's always updating and I can't use it. But that's not the case with love. We need to be quite intentional about that particular update and practice. And so I always take the line from 1 John where the epistle writer has, "We love because he first loved us." When we recognise how much we have been loved, then that increases, if you like, the bandwidth that we have for loving other people. The Corinthians were desperate for their update. With all their history of wrangling and difficulty, abuse, all the things that made them a dysfunctional people. And Paul said to them, you need to apply this one particular thing, and that is the practice of love. You and I live in a world where many apps exist and where there is a place for so many people to become trolls and abuse and harm and hurt others. The community of Christ is the community that's called to be a people whose primary aim and primary pursuit is the practice and act of love. If you need that app, and we all do, I suggest you find your nearest Bible and update to 1 Corinthians 13.